Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. I guess in this episode, folks, we're going to jump straight into talking about, has rebellion become your uniform? Now, hold on. This applies across a pretty wide spectrum, so hold on, buckle up, enjoy the ride. Take pictures of the view as we pass. No, but no, but has rebelliousness or rebellion become a uniform that either we or our team overall is wearing? Right now, oftentimes we jump in talking about organizational culture because that's where we a lot of the times come together to what? Form up as teams to accomplish a goal of serving our customers and so on. But our customers extend well beyond just where we work, right? There are communities, our families, our friends, groups we're involved with, countries, and the world at large, right? So take little nuggets of information and apply them in a healthy way toward healthily improving your own life and those of the people around you, right? With that said, let's jump in to, is rebellion a uniform that you're wearing? If you think about it, we have to kind of dissect the rebellion just a little bit, right? If you think about rebellion, it is what? Counter to what? Order. Typically, it's counter to an order for a reason, though, right? Because there's a rebellion that exists because something has not changed or something has not been recognized or there's a failure to be heard, etc., right? Rebellion isn't just spring up out of nowhere, right? And what can happen in organizations, for example, now you can apply this to all those other groups I mentioned, but what can happen in organizations, especially ones that have been around for multi-generation, is that there could have been a growing of dissent over the years. People irritated to have to put up with certain things, still doing the work, still coming in, still kind of doing the thing, but underneath it, they're wearing a uniform of rebellion against, it could be the connotation of not being heard. And I say connotation because maybe they are being heard, or maybe there is mechanisms. Remember, rebellion doesn't, necessarily have to follow a logical order, right? We see rebellions happen a lot of times in, say, countries where there's a democratic process, right? And rebellions still pop up. And really, if you think about it, folks, rebellion doesn't necessarily have to be an organized group, although it often can be and does become that at times. It could be a person who rebels, right? What's the difference between a person who rebels and a person who's a maverick? Well, I think one's one's pulling down, say, the organization or a system, and the other is taking a chance or taking a risk to elevate, right? Not necessarily the system, but something going on within that system, right? So you could have a group of mavericks that are going out there and really turn a company around. But you can have a rebellious person just destroy it, right? You could have a rebellious, you can have, and this isn't relegated to just position in an organization. Yes, it could be newer employees, for an example, or it could be a very self-serving human that is now a CEO, right? Or an owner that really doesn't care about the company, is just trying to use it as leverage to do other things. That is its own sort of rebellion, if you want to put it in those terms. It essentially has the same outcome, right? It may not have the same genesis of reason why it came into be, but the outcome is the same, right? So rebelliousness is essentially kind of a tearing down or a breaking away or a, undercutting, if you will. It can be aggressive or it can be passive aggressive, right? Rebellion. You could have somebody who's rebellious sibling, right? a rebellious sibling who rebels against the family, right? Maybe because of legitimate reasons, potentially, right? Or they might rebel because of reasons that aren't, maybe being treated poorly or whatnot. And so you can have rebelliousness in those situations too, right? And on the personal front. And so the idea that if a person rebels, right, they may wear that uniform of rebellion. They may actually have turned their uniform of rebellion, right, into part of their manner or part of their personality, interwoven with their personality and manner. They may feel like, well, I'm somebody who comes in and, flips everything upside down and exposes everything and da-da-da-da. Now, there is that part of it. Now, the nearest archetype you might see to this, although I think it can be a stretch in some regards, is the archetype of the, not the Joker, but the Joker, the Jester, oh gosh, it escapes me now. Just lost it. But the archetype, essentially, of the trickster. Thank you. Thank you for whoever's out there, putting the word in my head. The trickster, okay, which is kind of like the Joker, right? The trickster is there to kind of go in and flip everything upside down, but kind of does so in a very kind of a maneuvering way, right? Comes across like, oh yeah, I'm here doing my thing and everything's good, and bam, flipping things upside down. Now, that whole notion of the trickster from an archetypal perspective is, yes, the trickster has a purpose to expose something, right? To expose something. It's more of a stretch to say that the trickster is a full-on rebel, right? I guess you could make the connection, but the rebel, this is more of a I wear that name tag underneath all my clothes on my rebel uniform, right? Now, to have fun with this a little bit, we can think about the Star Wars movies and so forth, right? And depending whether you're a Star Wars fan or not, the whole notion of the empire, right? And then the rebellion, right? In this case, the rebellion is formed because the empire is oppressive, okay? So there is a reason why it has occurred, right? And they call themselves the rebellion. But not all rebels, right, are rebelling because they're oppressed. Some are more on the chaos side of things. Some lean more into destruction. You may have people who skip from organization to organization, right? Essentially being the rebel, right? Wearing that uniform, almost a rebel spy. and over time, kind of flipping your organization upside down and causing trouble, right? They're not a maverick. They're not improving anything. They're not working. That isn't happening necessarily, but they are definitely there. And you may see this come out. Now, if this rebel scenario is of a personal nature, then you might see interpersonal things going on, right? You might see a situation where you do have people in conflict, right? Conflict, if conflict starts to burble around a particular person or people, there may be a rebellion brewing, okay? Now, the healthy way to handle this, if you're a leader, is to just address it head on and say, hey, if there's issues. Now, if you don't have mechanisms and communication opened up such that you can take on new ideas and that people can be heard, well, you're laying the groundwork to allow a rebellion to build up because people aren't heard. Walls kind of go up between, say, leadership teams, the broader team. Walls start to go up and that communication starts to break down. Now, as things start to get worse or are not addressed, and remember, how would you know that they aren't addressed? Well, because they're not communicating. Part of the rebellion can be self-serving too, a little bit, right? Especially if it's self-serving to the point it's like, well, they did this to me and they didn't give me any advance warning on this, then I'm not going to give them advance warning on that, right? You get this whole, thing going on where, it's the war of passive aggressiveness, essentially, right? Holding each other out. You have this in the regular culture. This goes on as well. We see pettiness, right? There's a pettiness there to things. And so that rebel wearing that uniform now sees themselves as, well, I'm bringing a justice to a situation. Well, there is actually no justice being brought to a situation. A rebel's point isn't about bringing things to a healthy conclusion. The point is, if I don't get my way, then I'm going to find a way to do harm to this system, this organization, this X, this Y, this Z. Pick a group within, all of culture, right? The rebellion's whole purpose is to destroy, right? It is just simply to destroy. Mavericks, on the other hand, it's the other way around. They may take chances. They may, be a little bit wired a little. They may make mistakes. There may be things that appear to be rebellious, but they're working toward a common good or the better good of all, right? So that's kind of the double, the two sides of that situation. Now, again, you create an opportunity for rebellion to form by not having good communication, not having idea programs, not developing your team, not having good O plans, having poorly defined policies, processes, and procedures, being generally disorganized and disengaged, okay? And that's an easy way to compress all of that. If that is what you're doing or allowing to occur, if that environment is your environment and your organization, then a rebellion can and probably is the result. Oh, you got some random quality issues? Because it may be, let me back up. It may be, XYZ person screwed this up. And you go, okay, you address that and go, hey, okay, what happened here? Oh, it was this machine. It was this, it was that. Oh, really? You fix it. And then like whack-a-mole, you turn around and something else has gone on, right? You may have individuals doing a thing, but you may have a concert of failures going on, and you aren't going to be able to figure out where it's coming from. You don't want to go on this big witch hunt, okay, within your organization, but it is highly possible, don't get paranoid, but it is highly possible that you have a multitude working in concert to kind of throw wrenches in your monkey works, okay? Wrenches in the machinery of your organization. And doing that is causing disruption. So it's never one person or one department or one this or one that. Now, this is almost impossible to, like I said, you don't want to go on a witch hunt, but this is almost impossible to go tackle one to one. I'm not saying you can't, but it's only going to get worse for you. I'll be honest with you. It's only going to get worse for you. So what's the result? The result is identify where the flaws and weaknesses are, right? Open up the floor and the discussion and the communication to your team and say, hey, you know what? We've struggled. We've maybe missed some opportunities, and XYZ. Own some stuff, right? Own your scenario. But then offer up and empower these same people to now be part of the solution. Now, this is how you will know if these people, persons, maybe a whole bunch of people, are actually wearing the uniform of rebellion. They will not participate in engagement. They will not engage back. They will not communicate ideas back. They will refuse. They will withhold. You may hear them talking, in the lunchroom to somebody, but like, I'm not telling them. Why should I tell? That whole it's an attitude, right? This is what you'll see. They may not even have known consciously that they were wearing the uniform of rebellion, right? Maybe them just seeing this video or thinking about the whole concept, and we have to ask ourselves, what are we rebelling against, right? And do we know why? And is it hurting people or, person or people, culture, groups, teams, etc., right? Because if it is, then we're probably rebelling against something. Now, if it's a rebellion in the sense of, you're rebelling against an oppressive thing, right? Somebody's poisoning your food, poisoning your water, these extreme scenarios, you're not rebelling, okay? That's not a rebellion, okay? Let's be clear. It could be framed as one, but it's not a rebellion, okay? Yeah, in fact, when people have basically sabotaged your liberties in any manner, right? The response to that is not a rebellion, okay? It wasn't a rebellion, okay, to want to fix and eliminate people sabotaging, anything to do with our liberties and rights and so on and so forth, right? So this is something to remember, okay? We can't just run around calling people rebels, okay? A lot of this happens somewhat from a subconscious grassroots level, right? Some of it may be by design, okay? You may have an organization, and I'm just going to give you, you may have an organization that has multiple sites. They want to close down a site, so they have hiring firms or intermediaries of some sort. I'll just use that as a placeholder. Bring in some of the least qualified people ever to allow this particular site to basically fold, right? They may sabotage their own company, okay? It's not unheard of, folks, and it can happen. So you may be looking around as a team member going, why is all this stupid stuff happening? Why is all this chaos and confusion happening? Again, this is almost as impossible to prove, right, from your position and where you stand as it would be for, say, any leadership team to identify if there was a whole bunch of people, working in concert, forming a rebellion, right, like in Star Wars. Almost impossible to do that. But if you start to your intuition and you start to pick up on some situations and you start to figure it out and get out of there, right? Leave that organization. They were probably struggling already anyway. So don't stick around, because more often than not, people don't listen to their intuition, and the next thing you know, they're caught off guard, right? So don't get caught off guard. And on that note, we'll wrap it up. Hopefully you're all having a fantastic day. Remember, hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage one another. When we do this, not only are we helping to transform culture, but we're transforming our own lives. But don't forget, we can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing to transform on the inside. This is so important, folks. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.